Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I am thrilled to have you here on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those wanting to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we will be taking different life cycles. We're going to explore them financially and emotionally, because personal finances are really not about your money, but they are about your emotions associated with your finances. And the healthier we are emotionally, the better prepared we are to make financial decisions. And we are going to be fairly general in our discussion, but we'd love to make it more relevant for you. So please do call in. You can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. Or you can post your comments on YouTube, on Facebook, or any of the other channels that you might be listening to this on. A quick disclaimer, we are going to be talking about general concepts, and when it comes to co-parenting, which is part of what we're talking about today, it's very important to understand that every state has their own laws. So please make sure your unique situation and your state is where you put the information and put it together for yourself. That's a very important piece. And one other quick kind of PSA, if I can call it that. I said it before, but we are now officially in tax season. And so you will be getting lots of documents. Please keep organized and make it easier for your CPA to put it all together. You will get your return back quicker if you're able to do that. And as I said, we are now in tax season, which means we're in January, which is a very unique month. We just have gone through the holiday season. Our social calendar was probably fairly full with a lot of different parties, socially, for work, whatever it might be, and all of a sudden these are all gone. You'd expect that as our social activities calm down, so our life would calm down, but it doesn't always happen. We are back in the chaos of our lives that we were in before the holidays, and sometimes that chaos includes an unhappy relationship. In fact, traditionally, January is the month more divorces are initiated than any other month. And when two people get divorced, it's important to understand that sometimes it's multiples of two that are impacted. And yes, I'm talking about the couple and their children. And sometimes when somebody is emotional or stressed or scared, they tend to focus on their outcome. And unfortunately, the children in these situations are not always prioritized, but they are impacted. And so I am happy to have Rosalind Sedacca today, who is joining us, going to help us navigate this and talk about this. I've known Rosalind now several years. She has done amazing work. I am going to call you a pioneer, Rosalind, although I don't know that you like that term, but without a doubt, you have pioneered being the voice of a child-centered divorce. You are recognized as that. You have created the month of January officially, as we were speaking about earlier, as Child-Centered Divorce Month. You are an author, you are a radio show host, you are a divorce coach, a co-parenting coach. I'm sure I'm missing things as well. So I just want to say it's an honor, it's a privilege to have you on the show. And I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be talking with you again.
Thank you. And last time you were on the show, you did share your story, which I would love for you to do again. I think it's so important that people understand what you went through, and we'll talk about kind of where you are a little bit now with some of the things that are going on. But if you could share a little bit of that, that would be amazing, please.
Yes, I can. So I was in a long-term marriage close to 20 years, and the marriage was going sour. We were having a lot of conflict and fighting and moving in different directions. And my son was 11 years old. And after years and years of trying to put it off, I decided that divorce would be the best thing for us, because my son was showing signs of stress. He was getting stress headaches and other things that I knew were not healthy for him. Right. And I thought life would be smoother and better for all of us if we lived in two different homes and didn't have that conflict of being married. And so I initiated the divorce. My husband was not happy about it, but we made the decision to do that. And we learned not only how to divorce as amicably as possible, but also to co-parent really, really well, because the one thing we did still have in common was love for our son. And we both agreed we wanted to protect him in any way possible. So we went through the process, and we both moved on and remarried. And my son grew up. And one day, when he was in his early 20s, he came to me out of the blue and he said, "You know, Ma, you and Daddy did a really good job with your divorce. And I just wanted to thank you, because most of my friends whose parents divorced either hate their parents or are very angry at them. And I think you two really did a good job." And I was caught off guard, and I let out such a sigh of relief, because you have a lot of guilt not knowing how you impacted your child, which was always a concern for me. And that moment became a catalyst. And I realized that I had learned so much going through the divorce, learning how to co-parent effectively, and to get such a positive response from my son. I decided I wanted to share what I knew. And I founded the Child-Centered Divorce Network, became a divorce and co-parenting coach. And because my background was in writing, I put together several ebooks and e-courses and programs over the following years to help parents make the best decisions during and after divorce and co-parent effectively after divorce. And it's been 16 plus years that I've been involved in doing that. And it's been my passion project, my life's work.
Well, you have helped enormous amounts of people directly, indirectly, through the people you've influenced. I also want to point out, which I think is very important that people understand, this was not the time frame that we have of today, where today we have so many people focused on divorce, whether it's mortgages, real estate, certified divorce financial analysts, divorce coaches. These things, really, none of it existed back then. And so you kind of had this aha moment, like, we're not going to hand it over to the attorneys and let them fight it out, and we're going to fight out our piece. We're going to do this different. And it became obviously clearly way more than just your divorce that has been impacted by your eureka moment, if I can call it that. The resources we have today, I encourage people to understand what's out there and reach out to the people, because it does help you tremendously. But coming from a place where there was nothing, I think just talks to the quality of what you put together. And I think the idea of being able to do that, and as you said, identifying, even though you're getting divorced because there are things that are not aligned, but focusing on the things that you are aligned becomes so important as well with that.
Well, thank you. You're so right. Things were very, very different back then.
Right.
And we are very fortunate now for people who are experiencing this in the present moment, have so many more options, and they don't have to listen to their cousin or their neighbor and do divorce the way someone else is advising them to do it, when deep in our guts, we know that we have to put our children first if we're parents.
Correct. And, I think, the divorce coach of old, and for those listening versus seeing, I was using air quotes, was your friend who had gone through a divorce that was probably still bitter about what happened. Mm-hmm. They were not objective, right? They didn't have any training. They didn't have any strategy. They didn't have any way to walk with you in an objective fashion. And that's a lot of what has been created, whether it's the divorce coach, the co-parenting, whatever it might be. The resources are tremendous now compared to what we've seen even just 10 years ago, I think. So
thankfully so, wonderful. Yes.
So in my intro, I spoke a lot about January. January is a big month for a lot of things, new beginnings. It's, obviously the first month of the year. But why is January such an important month in divorce activity?
Well, you mentioned something that's very relevant. A lot of parents who are feeling like they're ready to get a divorce will postpone it from after the summer into the fall and say, I'm not going to do this during the holiday season. Let's wait until January. And so it's the month where more divorces are initiated than any other month of the year. And it's understandable why that happens. Sure. And every year, over 1 million children become children of divorce. So the number of people who are impacted by this just grows year by year. It's a club no one wants to belong to, but it happens. And the important thing is for parents to remember is that it can be done in a way that minimizes the stress and the scarring to the children, or the children can become real victims of unconscious parents who just aren't aware of how every decision they make has consequences that affect the kids. And if we are mindful and put the kids first, we can make better choices. And that's where my passion comes from, is to help parents make better choices and avoid some of the serious mistakes that we too often see and hear about. And kids can grow up, and then you could have what I call a happy ending, like I had with my own son, saying, thank you for doing it right.
I can't imagine what you were carrying for 12, or the relief that came out after 12 years. Yes. One of the things I say to every single client, and I've said it multiple times on my radio show, is that emotions often are the most expensive part of a divorce. All right. And, obviously I focus more on the financial side of it. Sometimes I feel like I'm a life coach and a divorce coach at the same time, which is inevitable. But I think it's so important that people understand they whatever the reason is, they want their pound of flesh, they want to get even, they want to come out ahead, they want to whatever. What they're not realizing is they're setting up the rest of that co-parenting relationship in a very adverse way. It's not going to result well. 6 months after the divorce, that still is around how you behaved. And that becomes such an important piece in this, I think, is part of it. The other piece, which I know you've said, I've heard you speak many, many times, that one of the things that you've kind of alluded to or spoken to is, what an amazing way to role model for your children going through adversity and being able to say to your kid, not directly, but through your actions, look at how you can go through adversity with integrity and with love for your child and, all the rest. And I think that is a very big piece that sometimes people aren't thinking about or noticing when they go through their divorce.
You said that so well. And that's such an important factor for people to bear in mind, that, yes, we are role models for our kids. They are watching us. And it's not what we say, it's what we do that really makes the impact on them. So we have choices. And that's the good news. There are choices, and we can find better ways of getting through this, especially on behalf of the kids that we love.
Right. And, I think that's where things become so, people become triggered. People become, you've been living with somebody for, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it doesn't really matter. They learn how you react to things. They know how to push those buttons. And if you're going to go solo, so to speak, and just fly alone, you're not really going to think about or learn, how do I overcome when they trigger me? And that's where somebody like yourself, who is very independent and very objective and just wants truly the best outcome, becomes such a valuable resource, because you can talk through those. There's going to be a hard conversation that's got to come up. There's probably going to be 10 of them that go through the divorce. How do you bring them up? How do you go through that? When he or she pushes your buttons, how do you step back and not react? All these things become such important pieces to going through the process. And I think these are lessons, quite honestly, you can take way beyond the divorce world in anything, whether it's dealing with other people socially, whether it's work, your children who tend to push our buttons sometimes too. These are all things, I think, where someone like yourself helps tremendously, right?
Yeah. And there's some really significant questions that we can ask ourselves. I have clients ask themselves some questions that really, from the get-go, from the start, sort of keep us in a more mindful position. If you think about at the very beginning, how are my kids going to think about the way we handle the divorce when they're grown adults? What are the kids going to say, and how are they going to hold us accountable when they're grown? It's very hard when you have a 3-year-old or a 10-year-old or even a 15-year-old to imagine they're going to be grown adults, but they are going to be, and they're going to be very judgmental about their life experience going through this. If you think ahead, you may steer away from making some decisions that are going to be more harsh, that are going to emotionally affect your children. So now's the time in every decision you make to just be thinking about that. What do I have any better choices? And am I doing this because I'm being the best parent I could be, or am I doing this because I want to get back at my ex and stab them, create
Absolutely.
hate?
What is that motivation for that action? And one of the things that you are very well known for is being the voice, so to speak, of the child, and bringing the voice of the child to the parents, because very often they don't understand the child's perspective and view. So what do our children want us to know about how divorce impacts them?
Oh, I love that question. So our kids want us to know that they do not want to be involved in your drama. They are watching their parents go through drama, go through sadness and pain and struggle, and they could see that. But they don't want to be caught up in that drama. So we don't want to turn our children into our confidants. We don't want to be talking to them and try to win them over to our side. I'm better than your father or your mother. Listen to me. And they pick up on that, even younger kids, and it makes them very uncomfortable. They don't want to be asked to make choices between the parents. So to directly say, would you rather live with your dad or your mom, is a question that no child wants to really answer, even if they have a choice, because they feel terrible that they're choosing between. It's much easier for them to be told that mom and dad have discussed the situation and we've decided this is how it's going to be and you're going to be doing this and that. Let the kids make some comments after they hear that, but don't make them make choices, and never, ever turn them into spies. It's so common and it's so easy to say, so what did daddy's girlfriend say? And where did you go after dinner? And how did daddy fix the dinner? And what time did you do that? Sure, you want to have conversations about things because that's a normal thing for parents to do. But there's a difference when you get into spying and asking your kids to be sharing information that they may feel uncomfortable sharing. If you're mindful of what it's like to be in your child's shoes, you'll be more aware of keeping them out of discomfort. And the kids especially want you to know that they hate being around you when you're fighting. Even if they agree with one or both of you about the issue, they don't want to be part of your conflict because they're helpless. They're innocent victims always. It's never the children's fault for the divorce. So you want to keep them out of the conflict, and you want to especially be mindful about not pointing the finger negatively about the other parent and say things to them that's disparaging about their other parent. Or here on the phone, you're talking to your own parents or a friend and putting down their parent. It's a very sensitive issue for children. And if you're just aware and conscious about not doing that, you're giving your kids the gift of a smoother childhood and a smoother experience transitioning through and after the divorce.
So many incredible points there. One of the things, don't be afraid to talk to your children appropriately. They need you more than ever, probably. So you do need to be engaged. And there are things that they do need to know, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
you can't keep them blind, but there's a lot of things they don't need to know. So again, I think a lot of very, very important things. I wish I could remember all the thoughts going through my head as you were saying them. But again, they need to know that they are loved, that they are wanted. It's not their fault. These are all pieces that they need to know. And as you said, they are not pawns in this or spies. They are children and they need to be children. And more than anything, they're your children. You want them to be healthy and happy. So.
And Hirsch, it's amazing how common it is for children to feel that on some regard they're to blame, that they're responsible because they hear parents fighting and they say, maybe if I didn't get a bad grade on my report card, or maybe if I hadn't been attacking my siblings over and over again and doing other things that kids do, maybe this wouldn't be happening. And even if the parents are fighting about the kids, it's never the kids' fault. These are adult issues and adult relationship challenges that are so complex. We have problems dealing with them, obviously. So we don't want to get our children involved in it because their brains are not developed enough to be able to figure out solutions for us. And so the moment we start talking to kids about our adult drama and conflict and problems and emotional situation, we move them into being little adults. Suddenly they want to be parenting us, taking care of us, fixing things for us, which they can't do, but they lose their childhood innocence. They're no longer being kids worrying about bullies and social media and all the things that are complicating their life now. Suddenly they're involved in trying to take care of their parents. And it's a no-win situation for them. And it's one of the most common resentments that teens and adolescents and adult children of divorce talk about, is the fact that suddenly they lost their childhood and they were parenting their parent. And fortunately now there are therapists and there are coaches who are there to support you in every step of the way, so that you don't have to go to your children to get that emotional support.
I think that's a good area for people to think about as we go to our break, because we are the parents. We need to parent, not be parented. So we will, before we do, please, how can people get in touch with you and reach out or learn more about all the things that you've created?
Very simple. My website is childcentereddivorce.com, and I have a free ebook right on the homepage, and tons of information, articles and videos and programs and courses and ebooks. So there's tons of resources, lots of free things, lots of low-cost things to do, as well as my own coaching services.
So childcentereddivorce.com. I encourage everyone to look at that. There are a lot of different resources and things for you to look at that I'm sure will resonate tremendously. And we will be back in 2 minutes with the rest of the show. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. I'm Hirsch Serman, your host of the Financial Wellness Hour, and today we have Rosalind Sedacca, who is talking about child-centered divorce, which I think is such an important thing for people to be thinking about as they go through the process. And even before, if you're contemplating and you reach out to professionals, ask them about it. Make sure that that is part of your conversation. Going to recap some of the things that we've been talking about, because there are a lot. I hope I can read all my Scrabble because there's a lot of things. But we started off just basically, it's tax season, it's a new year, January, what January means, how it is traditionally the largest month that we see, or the largest filings of divorces in any month, is a big one. And we spoke a little bit about the reasons, whether it's waiting till after holidays, or maybe even just seeing that I can't go through another holiday season like that could be part of it. You were very kind enough to share your story. And again, we spoke a little bit about having that, my words, eureka moment where you realize that things have to be done in a certain way, and there were no resources, and being able to do that yourself. But the beautiful part of it, not just that you figured it out, but being able to take that forward to so many people over the last 15 to 20 years that you've been doing it. We did speak a little bit about what our children want to know. We spoke about that it's important to engage with them. It's important to have conversations, the appropriate, right conversations with them, but also that there are a lot of conversations that sometimes we want to have that are not appropriate either for them to have as they go through and experience this. And again, I do want to reiterate, we had a conversation around being a role model and being able to show them that, everyone knows that life has adversity. Being able to turn around and show your children that you can go through adversity with integrity, and being able to do it in a way that teaches them that when they go through hardships in life, they can get through this in a positive way, and in a way that in some ways may even improve their situation or their life tremendously. So I think all of those are multiple conversation points off of that. We did share that you can go to childcentereddivorce.com, which is Rosalind's website, and there is way more information there that we could cover on the show. So I do encourage people going there as well. One of the things that we started talking about a little bit was, what are some good questions divorcing, or even people who are already divorced, can ask themselves when facing some of these challenges, to make sure that they keep that integrity and they co-parent in a good way?
Well, thank you for asking that. I find that the questions really put us in a mindset that keeps us more clear and focused. And that's why I like to use them a lot with clients. And one thing, we're dealing as co-parents with parenting issues that are inevitable, whether you're married or divorced. When you have kids, there's discipline issues. There's questions about vacation and summer camp and doing things with friends. And there's so many things that just come up naturally, and dealing with bullying and adversity or kids' grades. And so when these questions come up, I want you to ask yourself, am I making this decision the same decision I would have made if we were still married? Or am I making the decision different because I want to get back at my ex? And that fine-tunement is really very important, because you want to be making the best parenting decisions you could make, and the kind of parenting decisions you would have made no matter what. Just make sure that you're not focused on getting back and making that the direction that your mind is going in, because it takes you off course. And the impact, of course, is going to affect your children. So be very aware of asking yourself about that. And another really powerful question to ask yourself is, do I love my children more than I may hate or dislike my ex? A lot of people who are divorcing are really intolerant of the other person. They reach a point when they can barely tolerate each other. And it's sad when you wait long enough when it has to be that way, but it does happen. And it's so important to ask yourself, do I love my kids more? Because it's the same basic focus. If you're focusing on the well-being of your kids first, then you're not going to be making decisions that are out to get back at your ex, because the price is paid by the kids. The kids pay the price. When you're off course, the kids suffer. And I've spoken to so many adult children of divorce and adolescents of divorce who are very, not only angry at their parents, but very confused about relationships. They're afraid to get into committed lifelong relationships, afraid to marry, afraid to have children because they don't want to scar them. And it's up to us to show our children that there are mature ways of handling conflict, because conflict, as you said, is inevitable in life. So you want to be focused very much on that. And you want to be thinking about what are the best ways to address whatever is coming up, so that you're doing it by first putting yourself in your children's shoes. And if you
I think a big piece of that, sorry, I might have cut you off there, but is we spoke a little bit earlier about what is the motivation. And sometimes it's, probably subconscious. You're just angry, and that's how you're reacting because you're angry. You're not consciously, sometimes you are, but there are times where you're doing something, but you're not sure why you're doing that and, where the exact motivation comes from. So I think being able to step back, take a minute, and really assess, is this the right thing for my child? Again, taking the focus away from you or the other parent, but bring it back to the child is a very powerful strategy to give yourself a little bit of time. You don't have to react immediately. And sometimes it's better not to react immediately.
That's right. And our children really are very uncomfortable when we're making them feel like they have to side one way or another with parents. So they could be at your house, and so often there's split times when the children are with different parents at different days of the week, and they could be with, and some children are intimidated or afraid to just say, I miss mommy.
Yeah.
Can I call daddy? And the more you're able to be empathic about that and compassionate and say, of course you can call daddy. Of course, I understand that you miss mommy. And be able, if they feel free to be able to share that with you without feeling that they're being bad, then that's such a relief for them. These are emotional, psychological states that are so simple and common. And it's up to us to put ourselves in our kids' shoes and understand where this is coming from and give them the opportunity to express love for both parents. It doesn't mean anything negative about you if they're missing their father. It doesn't mean anything negative about you if they're asking about how I could spend more time with my mother at different periods. We just want to be able to have conversations with our kids and not make them bad or wrong for expressing those feelings. Some of the biggest problems of divorce are when they get into what we call parental alienation, when one parent is trying to keep the kids from loving or liking or living with another parent and downplaying that parent, making that parent the enemy, and in the guise of protecting the kids. And it's so emotionally and psychologically harmful for kids. And what kids really want is the ability to love both parents and have the ability for both parents to freely express their love for them.
Right.
So anything you do as a parent that's hindering either of those things is definitely dangerous and damaging for children in the short term and definitely in the long term.
And probably going to damage your relationship in many ways as well. If you're thinking about this from a selfish perspective, it doesn't help your situation to be closed off to any relationship to the other parent and to demonize the other parent and all the rest, because all you're doing is kind of looking ugly to your kids. And at some point, they have the ability to remove themselves from that relationship.
Exactly.
So I think, you see all these posts on Facebook, about parent alienation is child abuse and things like this. And it sounds initially like it might be a little extreme, but the truth is, if you are manipulating your child for your gain, which is really what is happening in a situation like that, that is probably a part of the definition of of abusing your child, and manipulating them in those ways. So
exactly, you said it so well. And
so you probably have another 10 hours worth of tips for improving a co-parenting and making it successful, whether it's going through the process or after. Can you share a couple that maybe we haven't spoken about at this point?
Well, there are some very simple things we could do. Catch your co-parent doing something right. And that's something we try to do with our kids, but it's so easy because so many conversations with a co-parent are, you forgot this, why didn't you do that? I hated that you said this. And we naturally will get into those conversations. And some co-parents can't even speak on the phone anymore. They have to put everything in a text or an email because of that. But it's so wonderful to start a conversation and say, thanks for picking Harry up an hour later than you expected. I know it had to change your schedule. I really appreciate it. And then talk about the issues that you may have to discuss. Giving them a pat on the back, so to speak, is not only good for their psyches, but it teaches them that they should be doing the same thing with you. And the best co-parenting is when you're appreciating each other. It's so important to be flexible when you're a co-parent. And most people in their divorce have parenting plans, and they have days and hours and rules, birthdays and holidays, and who's doing this when. And you need that as an overview. But I always remind clients that that is not life. Life is full of the unexpected. And what you want to be doing is being flexible with one another. I remember calling my ex up dozens of times and saying, hey, I have a meeting that's going to run late on Tuesday night. Can you take in this? I have a date on this Saturday. Can you watch him on Saturday? And I'll do 2 Saturdays in a row next time, and whatever it is. And yes, we worked it out together because we were doing it for our child. It wasn't for any other purpose. And the kids benefit from this. So starting with a flexible mindset, finding ways of acknowledging each other and appreciating each other, and saying kind things about each other to the children is such a gift for those kids, because it just makes life easier. And then there are communication skills that everyone can learn. There are ways of making complaints and going through difficult situations by using I messages, so that you're talking about how I felt rather than pointing the finger, starting with you did this and you did that. There are simple skills that we talk about in coaching that help, especially when you're dealing with a difficult person, because some exes are very difficult. We all know this is not an easy situation. It's not a storybook situation, but there are ways that you can learn to keep the conflict minimized and to get the best out of your co-parent, and to be as mature and responsible as possible when you're going through the experience. And that's worth learning and practicing.
So, firstly, I just want to recognize somebody just sent a whole bunch of hearts through the comments. So obviously resonated with somebody very, very strongly. And I agree 100%. There's actually somebody I know who will say that divorce is a human process with a legal document at the end, closing out the process. And that's kind of what you were saying with, yes, there is a parenting plan, but a parenting plan is a paper, and it's not people, and we need to deal with the people. I do want to focus, because I think the remainder of the show really on January is Child-Centered Divorce Month, as I mentioned earlier, and there are an enormous amount of resources. There's an enormous amount people can learn. And I'm going to ask, can you share a little bit more about, because you're the one that created this, what have you created, and what are some of the benefits that people can get out of looking into Child-Centered Divorce Month?
Yes. So every January, I put up a special website that's only available in January, Divorced Parent Support. That's divorced with an ED, divorcedparentsupport.com. And when you go there and you enter your email address, you'll immediately be taken to a page with listings of free gifts and resources from divorce experts on 4 continents around the world. So we have divorce attorneys and lawyers and therapists and parenting experts and all kinds of other experts who are focused on parenting and children issues and divorce. And they have provided free ebooks and tip sheets and videos and coaching programs, and you name it, it's there. Anything that's downloadable. So you could just click and get that gift, and click and get that gift, and just go through the whole list. They're wonderful people. I vetted every one of them. They're all experts who are family focused, child-centered, and they have expertise that they're sharing with you for free. And the goal is to educate parents on better options, better alternatives, new insights about resources that are available, so that you can make the best decisions about the divorce and parenting after divorce and dating after divorce. in the best possible way based on the expertise of these professionals who really care. So it's a wonderful resource. It's available all through January. Again, divorcedparentsupport.com. And I recommend that everyone take advantage of it and share it with anyone you know who's divorced, or maybe divorced 5-10 years ago and they're still having some issues, because there's lots of co-parenting and dating and relationship advice there as well. And I'm honored to have so many wonderful experts participate every year.
I do want to just also throw out, it doesn't matter whether you're contemplating going through the process or you are divorced, you will find stuff on there that will really educate you, resonate with you, speak to you, and that's something you just pointed out, which I think is so important. Sometimes people go, oh, I got divorced 5 years ago. It really doesn't matter when you got divorced if you haven't done the work and you haven't figured it out, right?
Yes.
It's so important.
There's some parenting experts there who are providing information that anyone can use. If you're a parent, that's great information and it's there.
And I would say also, the earlier you learn these skills, the better it's going to be. If you learn them while you're going through the process, you don't have to wait to co-parent after the divorce. You can start as soon as possible, right? So if you are able to learn some of these skills, the process will become easier because you'll learn how to speak to your spouse, soon to be ex-spouse, and that will maybe lower the tension levels. It will create a new dynamic, which is a more positive dynamic. It'll lower your stress. I think there's a lot of positives to be able to learn these things as soon as you can. We call it co-parenting kind of once you divorce, but the truth is you're supposed to co-parent your whole life once you have a kid, right? So I think that's a very, very important piece.
Yes.
Anything else, any other leave behinds or any thoughts or anything more on Child-Centered Divorce Month that you want to share?
Well, I just want to remind you that our kids hold us accountable as parents. And it's so easy when the kids are young to kind of be able to manipulate or coerce or just make the situation sound a certain way. And you could get away with it for a long time when your kids are younger. But just remember and be mindful of the fact that you will be held accountable and that they're going to grow up. And it's so important to just keep that in mind, because there's going to be questions that they're going to ask you. And there's so many parents with adult children whose relationships are not in a healthy manner. They're just not solid because of childhood abuses and situations that took place. And we have the power today to be thinking about every decision we make so that we could create a better childhood for our kids and a happier childhood for our kids. And I also want to remind parents that it's so important to be responsible when your children are going through the experiences of graduations and school events and holidays and birthdays, that both parents, if you're divorced, can be in the same room, can be in the same stadium, can be in the same place without the children being embarrassed to have them there because they can't get along. Think about what it's like from your child's perspective and be the adult role model that you should be.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful way to end the show and a beautiful message, because it is achievable. It very much is achievable. And again, to get a hold of Rosalind, you want to give your information again, Rosalind, just so people can?
Year round, my website is childcentereddivorce.com, and I have one-on-one coaching programs as well as digital courses and programs that you can check out that go through every facet of life, especially breaking the divorce news to children, anger management for co-parents, dating after divorce, all of those things. And I also, right now in January, invite you to visit divorcedparentsupport.com. That's divorced with an ED, divorcedparentsupport.com, to take advantage of all the wonderful free gifts from divorce experts around the world for International Child-Centered Divorce Month.
I encourage everyone to go. I would also throw out that Rosalind has helped individuals through their process. but also other divorce coaches have looked to Rosalind as an expert and gained from her as well. So definitely reach out to her. You will be in really good hands. And I appreciate it, focusing on the children. They tend to be the apple of our eye, however you want to call it. But sometimes we don't act that way. And I think that some of what you've shared in the insights can really help people get back on track to be focused and child-centered in the way that they should be. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour, and I appreciate you joining us. You can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial, whether you want to reach out to me with questions or for Rosalind, our guest today. I want to thank CC Schatz, my producer, for doing all that she does behind the scenes and making it such an easy thing to do, to have a wonderful conversation and learn so much. Thank you all. Have a great week, and we will see you in 2 weeks for the next show.